I'm Bethany Hall, 34, who left Grand Rapids to chase a life in Seattle. My voice trembles as I say it, the words heavy with a truth I can't yet share. Seattle buzzes around me, towering glass buildings, endless ambition, but it isn't home. Tomorrow, I'll board a plane back to Grand Rapids for my 35th birthday, craving the warmth of family I've been away from for so long. I picture laughter, a birthday cake glowing with candles, and the chance to stitch our bond back together. But something gnaws at me, a whisper of doubt I can't shake. At the family dinner, the table is set, but the atmosphere feels wrong. My parents' smiles falter as they deliver the news my birthday celebration is canceled. Instead, they're funding a European trip for Cole. His name lands like a stone, stirring up a storm I hadn't expected. My chest tightens as I force a nod, the weight of being overlooked pressing harder than ever. What has changed since I left, and why does this moment feel like it's unraveling something bigger? Something I've buried for years. I'm not ready to tell you everything, not yet. But I need you to stay with me. Have you ever felt pushed aside like your moment was stolen? Share your story below and hit that follow button to keep walking through mine. Let's uncover what's been left unsaid together. Growing up in Grand Rapids, I was always overshadowed by my older brother. Cole's piano filled the house, his melodies enchanting everyone who heard them. At just 7, he could play Chopin with a grace that made neighbors stop in their tracks to listen. "He's a prodigy," my mother would say, her eyes glowing with pride. And me, I sat at the kitchen table working on math problems, straight A's across the board, but no one noticed. My report cards were shoved into a drawer while Cole's recital programs were framed and hung in the living room. By high school, I had found my own stage on the basketball court. I led the team to the state semifinals, my jump shots sharp enough to make the coach nod in approval. But at the dinner table, the conversation always circled back to Cole's next competition. "He's got a shot at Juilliard," my father said one night, barely glancing at my trophy. I swallowed hard and kept training, hoping one day they would finally see me. Cole's talent came at a cost my parents paid without hesitation. Lessons, travel for performances, even custom suits for the stage consumed the family's finances. I wanted to study engineering to build something of my own. But when I asked for help with tuition, my mother only sighed. "We've already stretched ourselves too thin for your brother." So at 16, I started bussing tables at a diner, the smell of grease clinging to my clothes, saving every dollar I could. Meanwhile, Cole had full parental backing for his prestigious music program. I still congratulated him, forcing a smile, my hands raw from dishwater. There was one time I thought I might finally be recognized. At 17, I won the regional science fair with a project on renewable energy. I had spent months soldering wires, my fingertips numb. On award night, I invited my parents, imagining their faces as my name was called. But they were in Chicago, at Cole's recital instead. "You'll tell us all about it later." My father's voice crackled over the phone, distant. I stood on stage alone, clutching the certificate, applause echoing in a hall that felt cavernous and cold. I wasn't truly angry. I loved Cole. He never demanded the spotlight, it just always seemed to find him. But whenever I tried to step into the light myself, I was pushed back into the shadows. Like the time I practiced my speech for the school assembly, eager to share my dream of building a better world. My English teacher called it inspiring, but my parents missed it, too busy at Cole's regional competition. "Next time," my mother promised. But there was never a next time. Those years taught me to rely only on myself. I got into Michigan State on a scholarship with savings scraped together from the diner. I spent late nights bent over textbooks in my dorm, lit by a desk lamp, while Cole's letters arrived from his music program filled with stories of roaring applause. I was proud of him, but each letter reminded me of everything I had to fight for on my own. I graduated with honors, the cap on my head, a quiet victory, while my parents attended Cole's debut performance in New York. "We knew you'd be fine," my father said over the phone. I nodded, throat tight. Looking back, I see the pattern. It wasn't just about money or attention, it was about who they believed in. Cole was their dream, their proof of something extraordinary. And me, I was the steady one, the child who didn't need looking after. But I longed to be seen too, to be acknowledged as someone building something real, even if I couldn't yet name what it was. That childhood shaped me, carving out a resilience I never asked for. It's why I left for Seattle, determined to build a life from nothing. But sitting at the family dinner table now, after all these years, I wonder if anything has really changed. Cole is still the star. And me? I'm still waiting for my moment. After graduating from college, I left Grand Rapids for Seattle, carrying with me a dream of changing my life. The energy of the city swept me up, and I threw myself into biotechnology, a field where I could leave my mark. My days stretched endlessly, the lab alive with the hum of machines. Late nights bent over data analysis, the glow of my laptop casting light across a small apartment. I rarely spoke about my work, not even to my parents. It was my private world, a place where I didn't have to stand in anyone's shadow. Yet family still pulled me back, even from 1,000 miles away. One spring, my mother called, her voice taut. "The roof is leaking, we don't have enough money to fix it." The next day, I wired the money using an anonymous account. A benefactor, I told the bank. My name never appeared on the transfer. A month later, my father mentioned a new piano for Cole, so his career won't be interrupted. Again, I sent the money unsigned, unacknowledged. Each transfer was like a thread tying me to them, though they never knew it was me. Vanessa walked into my life at a conference, her sharp wit cutting through the noise of the packed room. We bonded over cups of coffee, sharing stories of ambition and grit. She was the first to notice my quiet sacrifices. "You're carrying all of them," she said one night, her gaze probing when I dodged questions about the money I sent home. I only shrugged, but her words lingered. Vanessa became my anchor, the friend who saw the weight I kept hidden from everyone else. Work grew more demanding. I led projects, handled crises in gene editing protocols, my hands steady under pressure. Colleagues respected me, but I kept my distance, focused on the next breakthrough. Each success was proof that I was no longer the forgotten child. Yet every time my mother called, breathless with excitement over Cole's latest performance, I listened in silence, my heart tightening, as I realized they still never asked about me. I sent another sum to cover their car repairs, left my name off, and hung up without a word. Vanessa saw the pattern clearly. One dinner, she pushed her plate aside. "Why don't you tell them it's you?" Her voice gentle but firm. I stared at my wine glass, the liquid trembling. "They don't need to know," I answered. But her question stayed with me, stirring something I couldn't yet name. Was I helping them out of love, or was I still chasing recognition I would never receive? The years piled up. I climbed higher in my career, my name spoken in boardrooms I had never dared dream of entering. Yet I kept my contributions to my family hidden, even as the amounts grew larger, the hospital bills for my father, the new furnace for the house. Vanessa was always there, reminding me I wasn't alone. One night she handed me a beer and said, "You're building something remarkable, but you're still hiding." I laughed, but her words cut straight to the bone. Hiding had become a habit safe. The turning point came unexpectedly. A late-night call from my mother, her voice trembling. "Cole is struggling, he needs help for his next tour." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the banking app. For the first time, I wavered. Why was I still pouring myself out for them when they never truly saw me? Vanessa's voice echoed in my mind, urging me toward the light. I sent the money, but something had shifted. I wasn't sure how much longer I could remain silent. Seattle had given me a new life, a chance to prove my worth. My work was changing the world in ways I couldn't yet share. But as I sat in my apartment, the city lights spilling through the window, I realized Grand Rapids still held me fast, not just with love, but with a need I couldn't let go of. Vanessa saw it all, and her friendship kept me steady. And yet, as I prepared to return home for a birthday gathering, I couldn't help but wonder, would I ever be recognized for the person I had become? The 4-hour drive from Seattle to Grand Rapids gave me time to think about family. I pictured a warm evening, my 35th birthday, drawing us together, erasing the years of distance. As I turned into the driveway, the house looked worn, the porch light flickering, but I brushed aside the unease. Dragging my suitcase inside, my heart raced with thoughts of a shared meal, a moment of belonging. In the kitchen, my mother Janet stood at the cutting board, slicing onions with precision. "Beth helped me with the vegetables," she said briskly. I picked up a knife and chopped carrots, the familiar rhythm pulling me back into the feeling of the old home. Cole leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone, his presence effortless, as if he didn't have to try. I glanced over, hoping for a greeting, but he only nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. We worked almost in silence, the clatter of pots and pans filling the space where warmth should have been. "It's a big dinner," Janet said, as she stirred the pot of sauce. I set the table, arranging each plate carefully while my father sat in the living room, focused on Cole's tour schedule. "He has a solo in Amsterdam," he called out proudly. I adjusted a fork, forcing a smile while Cole grinned broadly. "It's going to be huge," he said, eyes still glued to his phone. When the cooking was done, Janet set down her knife, her face tightening. "Beth, we have to cancel your birthday party," she said, her tone heavy and final. "We're short on money, and Cole's European tour is the top priority. You have to understand, this is a big break for your brother." I froze, the salad bowl still in my hands, the air sucked out of the room. My father nodded, his eyes never leaving the papers. "This is his turning point," he added, as though that explained everything. Cole looked up, his face calm. "Yeah, Beth, Europe will change my career," he said, leaning back. "A party isn't such a big deal compared to that." His careless words cut like a sharp knife. I set the bowl down, my fingers trembling. "Mom, it's my 35th birthday," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Don't I deserve to celebrate just once?" Janet's eyes narrowed, her hands clasped tightly. "Beth, don't be selfish," she replied. "Cole needs this money more. We're a family, and family supports each other." The word family landed like a wall, shutting me out. I swallowed hard, my throat burning, and turned back to the sauce, stirring to hide the shake in my hands. Cole shrugged and bent over his phone again, his silent agreement plain. We sat down to eat, the table full of dishes, many of them ones I had made. Janet and my father traded stories about Cole's upcoming shows, their voices animated. "He's got a gig in Prague," my father said, passing the bread. I took a bite. The food, tasteless. Janet's words echoing in my mind, the family's priority. I wanted to argue, to demand that they see me, but I stayed silent, my pain hidden behind practiced composure. As we cleaned up, Cole mentioned a new piece he was practicing. "This one's for Paris," he said, eyes alight. Janet beamed, laying her hand on his arm. I stacked plates mechanically, the weight of exclusion pressing heavier. "We'll do something small for your birthday," my father said, as if in passing. I nodded, chest tight, knowing that something small meant nothing at all. I stepped onto the porch, the cool night air briefly soothing me. The street was quiet, the stars sharp above. I had come back searching for connection, but dinner had drawn a line I could not cross. Cole's tour, his future, was their focus, while I stood on the outside, the unanswered question burning. As I stood there, bracing myself for the night ahead, I had no idea it would change everything. As I was sitting with my family eating pizza, the phone rang. The dining room was cluttered with paper plates and soda cans, heavy with the smell of grease, and the sting of words still lingering in the air. Cole leaned back in his chair, animatedly recounting his rehearsal schedule, while Janet and my father Donald nodded along, eyes fixed on him. I glanced at my phone, the name Vanessa lit up the screen. I answered quietly, hoping to keep the call short. "Hello, what's going on?" I whispered. "Bethany, are you still in Grand Rapids?" Vanessa's voice came out loud, the speakerphone mistakenly on. "The jet's fueled and ready for the London trip. The BioSpark board is waiting." You remember this merger could push us past 9 figures, right? My heart stopped. Janet's slice of pizza froze midair, her eyes wide. Donald's fork clattered onto his plate. Cole's head snapped up, the familiar smile gone. Vanessa, wait. I fumbled to switch off speaker, but she kept going. Running a multi-million-dollar biotech company isn't easy, but you make it look effortless, CEO. The room froze, silence pressing in like a wall. Donald's mouth opened and closed again. Janet's face went pale, her hand gripping the edge of the table. Cole stared at me, his forgotten slice of pizza in hand, as if in a few seconds I had become a stranger. Bethany, Donald's voice trembled. CEO, BioSpark. What is this? His fork lay abandoned, streaks of sauce across the table. I set the phone down, Vanessa's words still hanging in the thick air. There was no retreat now. I drew a breath, heart pounding but voice steady. Yes, I said. I'm the CEO of BioSpark. We're working on gene therapy. It's a big deal. I left out the private jet, the millions, the years of building in solitude. The truth alone was more than enough. Janet's eyes glistened, her voice unsteady. Why didn't you tell me the steel she always carried was gone? I wanted to say I had been waiting for them to care, waiting for them to ask about my life, but I held it back. I thought it didn't matter to anyone. I answered, heavier than I intended. Cole leaned forward, his brow furrowed. You run a company like that? His voice was tangled with awe and doubt. And you never said a word. Donald shifted his hands, restless. A plane to London, he muttered as if testing the words on his tongue. You've been doing all this? All along. His tone mixed shock with something softer, perhaps regret. I nodded, my throat tight, weighed down by the strangeness of their sudden attention. The room seemed to shrink, their eyes fixed on me as if seeing me for the first time. Vanessa's voice spilled from the speaker again, oblivious to the storm. Bethany, oh my God, was that on speaker? Sorry, I quickly turned it off. My fingers trembling. It's fine, I said though. It was anything but. I'll call you back. Hanging up, the silence returned thick with unspoken questions. Janet reached out, hesitated, then stopped just short of my hand. Beth, I had no idea, she whispered. I wanted her to go on to admit the years she'd overlooked me, but she stayed silent. Cole set down his glass, the usual confidence gone. This is huge. Beth, he said cautiously, as though seeing me clearly for the first time. I pushed the cold pizza aside. I just wanted to be here tonight. I said, my voice firm though inside. I was spinning. Not to prove anything. But the truth now exposed had rewritten the whole room, erasing the priority Janet had given to Cole's tour only hours earlier. The table sank into silence, the weight of revelation pressing down. Donald's fallen fork. Janet's stunned quiet. Cole's searching gaze, each a marker of a turning point. I had lived for years in their shadow, but now with a single phone call I stood in a light I had never asked for. Meeting each of their eyes, I wondered if this moment could change us, or if the old patterns would pull us back again. The next morning, the room was still heavy with the weight of Vanessa's call. Breakfast was strained, the clinking of coffee cups echoing too loudly in the silence. Janet stood at the sink, scrubbing dishes with urgent strokes. Donald sat at the table, his newspaper untouched, eyes flicking toward me again and again. Cole slumped in the chair across from me, scowling as he hunched over his phone. I kept pushing a piece of toast around my plate, the weight of last night's confession pressing on me, urging me to speak. I've always been there for this family. I began, my voice steady but laced with sorrow. The money for fixing the roof. The piano for Cole Dad's hospital bills, I sent it all. Quietly. And yet, I've always been the one forgotten. The words spilled out, years of restraint breaking open. Janet's sponge froze mid-scrub. Donald's jaw tightened, his hands knotting together. Cole's thumb stopped scrolling, his eyes narrowing. You were the one sending the money. Janet turned, her voice sharp. Why keep it secret, Bethany? If you're such a big CEO, why hide it from us? Her tone brimmed with accusation, as if my silence were the sin, not their neglect. I leaned forward, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. Because I wanted to be seen without money, I answered. But I never was. It's always been about Cole, his tours, his career. Donald cleared his throat, speaking softly. You should have told us, he muttered, eyes sliding away. We could have been proud of you. The word proud rang like a promise never kept. I shook my head. I shouldn't have to beg for pride, I said, my voice catching. I've carried this family, and yet my birthday was canceled for Cole's tour. Cole slammed his phone on the table, his face flushed. So now you're dragging all this out to blame us, he snapped. You come back with piles of money acting like we owe you. You're selfish, Beth. His words cut deep, twisting everything I meant. Before I could respond, he was already bent over again, fingers pounding furiously on Twitter. The air grew denser as we cleared the table. Janet kept silent, lips pressed into a hard line. Donald fidgeted with his paper, muttering about fairness. I retreated to the living room, chest aching, desperate for space to breathe. My phone buzzed, pulling my eyes down. Cole's post glared back at me. My sister thinks money makes her a hero, flaunts her empire while I have to chase my dream. Selfish. Family drama. The words landed like blows, public cruel. On Instagram, the post was already gathering likes and strangers' comments. I clenched my phone, my hands trembling. Cole, you posted this. I cried out, my voice breaking. He leaned against the doorway, smirking. So what? It's the truth. You're turning everything into your own story. I stepped toward him, anger flaring. I've given everything, I said, my voice low but searing. And you twisted into this? I held up my phone, the screen still lit with his accusation. Janet stepped in between us, her face stern. Bethany, you brought this on yourself, she said. You hid your success, and now you expect us to bow down. That's not how family works. Her words echoed Cole's, forming a united wall against me. Donald stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor, his indifference more painful than any accusation. The room became a battlefield, accusations piling up, turning my sacrifices into weapons against me. I turned away, my breath uneven. I never asked for worship, I said, my voice trembling. I only wanted recognition. Cole scoffed, his fingers still hovering over his phone, ready to post again. My phone buzzed once more, each new notification like a needle driving the fight beyond these walls. I wanted to scream to make them understand, but their eyes told me clearly they had already chosen a side. I stood there, crushed under the weight of their accusations and Cole's public attack. The truth I had revealed last night hadn't pulled us closer, it had only deepened the divide. My phone buzzed again, another stranger's comment on Cole's post, the world now passing judgment on a story they knew nothing about. And I wondered if there was any way back from this, or if the family I had fought so hard to hold together was already gone for good. That afternoon, I left the house and drove to a hotel in Grand Rapids. The air in my family's home had grown suffocating, thick with accusations and Cole's stinging jabs online. My suitcase rattled in the trunk as I pulled into the hotel parking lot, the city skyline blurred in gray through the windshield. I checked in. The room was quiet, sterile, and cold, a stark contrast to the morning's chaos. Sitting on the bed, I dialed Joseph, my mentor in Seattle, needing the steady sound of his voice. Bethany, are you all right? Joseph's warm yet worried voice cut through the static of the call. I exhaled, my finger tracing the edge of the desk in the room. Not really, I admitted. My family? They found out about BioSpark, but they blame me for keeping it a secret. Cole's smearing me online, calling me selfish. I don't know how to fix this anymore. My voice trembled, the hurt spilling out despite my efforts to stay composed. Joseph listened in silence, his patience a kind of anchor. You've carried them for years, he finally said. Money support you gave without asking for recognition. But they never truly saw you, Bethany. You can't keep pouring water into a leaky bucket. His words struck deep, reflecting a wound I'd long carried. Set boundaries, he urged. Protect your peace. You've built a life they can't diminish no matter what they post. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, letting his advice sink in. I remembered the money I had sent, thousands to repair the roof, to buy Cole's piano, to cover Donald's hospital bills, all in silence, hoping they'd notice me. But they never did. Janet's accusations, Donald's silence. Cole's public attack, they had chosen their story. I opened my banking app, scrolling through years of transfers. Each payment was a tether binding me to them, a tether I now realized had been strangling me. "I've stopped," I said, more to myself than to Joseph. "No more money, no more calls. I won't beg for attention anymore." My voice was firm, the decision carved in stone. Joseph's tone softened. "That's strength, Bethany," he said. "It's not giving up, it's choosing yourself. You deserve that." I nodded faintly, though he couldn't see it, feeling a weight lift even as my chest remained tight. I ended the call, the screen going dark. The room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioner. My mind drifted to Cole's new guitar, the one I paid for last year, and the countless home repairs to keep them comfortable. Enough. I logged into my account and canceled the recurring transfers. The confirmation appeared on the screen, a small act, but one that carried enormous weight. I wasn't just cutting off money, I was cutting off the expectation that I would always be there, quietly giving. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. "Beth, come home. We need to talk." I stared at it, too late, too vague. I didn't reply. Another notification flashed, a new post from Cole, throwing shade about family disappointment. I didn't open it. The world could judge me, but I wouldn't justify myself any longer. I had spent years hoping they'd change, that they'd see me beyond Cole's shadow. They never had, and I couldn't wait anymore. I stood pacing the room, each step steady. Outside the window, Grand Rapids stretched out, streets both familiar and distant. I had returned seeking connection, but found only old fractures. My efforts erased, my presence overlooked. Joseph's words echoed, "Protect your peace." I opened my laptop, typing an email to my assistant asking her to rearrange my schedule. Tomorrow I would fly to London, back to BioSpark, where my work mattered. As I packed my suitcase, the decision solidified, heavy as stone. Cutting ties wasn't just ending the flow of money, it was reclaiming my own worth. Janet, Donald, Cole. They had built a world where I was always in the background, but I didn't have to live in it anymore. The hotel room felt like a threshold, a line I had just crossed. I didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time I felt truly free to find out. Time had passed and I had moved on. 6 months later, I sat in my office overlooking Puget Sound in Seattle. The waters shimmered under the spring sun, a gentle reminder of the life I had reclaimed. On my desk lay the files of the new scholarship fund founded by BioSpark, each page a step toward giving disadvantaged children the opportunity I once had to fight for alone. My phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa confirming our dinner with Joseph. I smiled, warmth spreading from the family I chose, something I had never known in my old home. The decision to cut ties had changed everything. I no longer followed Cole's social media, but Vanessa mentioned that his European tour had collapsed. A string of cancellations and scathing reviews had dragged him back to Grand Rapids, his dream in ruins. Janet and Donald, struggling without my financial support, had been forced to sell their car to cover debts. I learned this not from them, but through an email from a distant relative. Since the day I left, they had never reached out. Their silence echoed, but it no longer weighed me down. Leaning back in my chair, I reread the mission statement of the scholarship fund. It focused on biotechnology education for underprivileged youth, a way of giving back the resilience I once had to summon on my own. As I signed the final approval, a surge of feeling rose within me. This was my true legacy, not the money once sent to fix roofs or buy pianos. Those acts, though generous, had tethered me to a family that never truly saw me. Cutting that cord was painful, but it set me free. Vanessa knocked, her bright smile lighting the doorway. "Ready for the board meeting?" she asked, flopping into a chair. I nodded, gathering my papers. "Joseph will be joining us for dinner afterward," I said. "He has ideas for expanding the fund." Vanessa's eyes lit up. That man's a genius. Our friendship forged in Seattle's biotech world had only grown stronger, a relationship built on mutual respect, not obligation. Joseph, my mentor, remained a steady beacon, his words from the beginning still resonating. Protect your peace. My phone pinged again with an email from the scholarship team listing the first group of recipients. I skimmed through their stories, children from fractured families chasing dreams in the face of scarcity. I saw myself in them, the girl who once had no safety net to fall back on. The scholarship wasn't just money, it was a message: you are enough. I had learned that lesson at great cost, and passing it on now felt like healing the wound I had carried for too long. I remembered Janet's last message still unanswered in my inbox. She had asked me to come home, but home was no longer a place that cast me aside. Donald's silence. Cole's public attacks, they had already revealed their truth. When I stopped sending money, their lives faltered, not because I abandoned them, but because they had depended too heavily on me. Cole's failure in Europe was not my fault. It was the consequence of his choices, just as my freedom was the result of mine. At dinner, Joseph raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes warm. Vanessa clinked her glass against mine, laughter filling the air. We discussed BioSpark's next project, a gene therapy trial that could save lives. The work was demanding, but it energized me. I had built something meaningful, not to prove myself to anyone, but because it was the right thing to do. The burden of family expectations had fallen away, replaced by a purpose I had chosen for myself. On the drive home, the city lights streaked past, so different from the quiet streets of Grand Rapids. For years, I had tried to belong there, but now I understood belonging wasn't forcing myself into someone else's story, it was writing my own. Setting boundaries may have cost me my family, but it gave me clarity. Helping others' children who needed opportunity, not a savior, had begun to mend the scars inside me. The pain had not vanished, but it no longer defined me. I turned into my driveway, Puget Sound glimmering in the distance. My phone lay silent, no messages from Janet or Donald. Cole's posts no longer reached me. I had built a life that didn't need their validation, and the lesson was clear: boundaries, and the right kind of giving could heal wounds deeper than I had ever imagined. As I stepped inside, I felt whole, ready for whatever came next.